Um, Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm pretty sure I know most everybody, but I'm David Cook. I'm the Director of Innovative Learning at the Kentucky Department of Education, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to today's coalition meeting. I don't know who's got the slides, but we have got a lot to do today. We're going to hear from almost everybody that's on the call, but we're excited about the reports from our L3 districts. And as the slide says, we welcome you to say hello in the chat as we get started here today. There you go. So next slide, please. So just wanted to quickly go over the agenda for today. We're going to have the welcome and connections activity. We're going to introduce you to cohort 3 of the L3, which we're very excited to do today. We'll have presentations from cohort 2 and prototype presentations from cohort 1, which are very exciting. And then we will update you on the federal competitive grant for state assessments grant that Kentucky is completing an application to be submitted in a couple of weeks. And then we will have a strategic planning report out. So big, full packed agenda. So we're excited about all those items. So next slide. Purpose for today: learn about the work of the L3 district teams, identify connections to the themes from our work and patterns emerging from the local work underway. And just a reminder, if you haven't done so yet, please rename yourself up at the top where your picture is with your the name of your district and your name. So as you can see by the example, Johnson-Donnie. So whoever you're representing today, please, so we'll know how to do breakouts and so forth. And I guess I'm turning it back over to Donnie at this point.
Yeah, thanks, David. So great to see everybody. This is like the best part of my week, is seeing the Kentucky Coalition for Advancing Education. And we just put the link to the cohort 1 prototypes into the chat. Just reminding you to take a look through those if you haven't already, and identifying one community that you want to hear more from. The community names are at the top of each slide, so Allen County all the way through Shelby. And so as you are able, take a look and rename yourself to reflect where you want to go when it comes to breakout time later. Next slide, please. So we always start just by grounding in the community agreements that have guided us as a working group since the beginning. We're almost at a year of being a coalition, and it's really great to reground ourselves in these once again, that we start and end on time. Use video on if you can, and also use your mic in the chat freely, and manage both of those. We are always listening to understand what other people are experiencing in all of this work. And we also acknowledge many forms of expertise because we all bring such diverse experiences to this room. You are all many things, not just a job title. Many of you are parents, teachers, people in the community. So bring your full self to the questions and discussions today. And we invite you to ask the next hard question, because this is tough work and we need to lend our brain power to make sure it goes well. And we also ask you to stay present, which means being focused on the work in this room, and also to dream boldly and think big about what's possible with assessment and accountability and the work that we're doing. And in bold here, preferencing learning over performing. We are going to be hearing from these various communities. They're proud of their work, and they should be. And we offer up everyone to be in a space of vulnerability, because it's emergent, and we're all learning and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. And so we invite you to take the learning stance over a performing and needing to be perfect stance. Next slide, please. All All right, at 4:06 here in the afternoon, Eastern time, we would love for you in the chat. Many of you have been using the chat. It's very exciting to see all these names popping up. But if you could describe your current mood in terms of a color, what color would you choose? So just populate the chat. We'd love to see a flood of thoughts. Green, ready to go. Melissa, I love that. And Contessa, I see that you're in California at the Deeper Learning Conference. Yellow, sunny California. That's great. All right. Lots of energy, different colors of the rainbow popping up. Just want to hold on to that diversity in this room, all these different colors and energy and perspective. This is great. All right, if we can go to the next slide. We are so excited, of course, to be hearing from cohorts 1 and 2 today, but we'd be remiss in not celebrating the presence and first appearance of cohort 3 of the local laboratories of learning. So exciting to be welcoming these 6 communities here today. So Carter County, Floyd County, LaRue County, Rowan, Warren, and Washington counties will be joining this work as ride-along partners with cohorts 1 and 2, learning from them, contributing to them, and we're so excited to welcome them here today. Those who could make it, and we'll be looking forward to seeing them join all of these convenings moving forward. So congratulations and welcome to them. Next slide. So we just want to orient you to where cohorts 1 and 2 are. So we've been engaging in this inclusive design process. Cohort 1 has moved from empathizing all the way over to testing, and that's where they are right now. They've created prototypes and now they're testing them. And so they're here to share about what they've learned from those tests. Cohort 2 is at the very beginning of their journey. They're putting together their inclusive coalitions locally, and they're going to be beginning, some of them already have begun, their empathy process. And so we are at both ends of the spectrum here and looking forward to hearing from both of them. Just wanted to orient everybody to where we are in the process. Next slide. Even as we're going through this design process, we think there are certain habits that help enable really inclusive, thoughtful design. The first habit that we want to highlight is that of inclusion, bringing diverse voices into the room with you to do the work. The second is empathy, which is seeking to understand the views, feelings, and needs of others as we do the work together. And then co-creation, not just hearing their voices, but including them in the process of creating the solution to a challenge. And then reciprocity, exchanging or sharing power, getting feedback, being responsive, giving feedback. All of these are elements of reciprocity. So these are the 4 habits of inclusive design that have asked all of our L3 leads to keep in mind as they do this work. And so we wanted to orient you to that, and we'll be focusing a lot of our questions around these habits today. Next slide. So cohort 2 is about to present. They're going to present about their local coalitions, which is the first step in this idea of inclusion. And we're going to ask you to, as they present about their local coalitions, we're going to ask you to keep in mind these questions. What are we learning about inclusion in these local coalitions? How is it different than the inclusion here in the KCAE? And cohort 1, after cohort 2, is going to be sharing their prototypes and what they've heard from their communities about them. And we're going to ask ourselves what feedback has been most important in the development of that prototype. And as communities are creating new user experiences, how might we hold ourselves accountable to providing this experience with quality for all users? What data would you want to know and hear in order to check on quality and equitable access? And then also, just broadly, what are we learning about assessment and accountability? What are we learning about the ways in which we want the state and the local to relate to one another? All right, next slide. So, like we said, we're going to have each member of cohort 2 share a brief description of their coalition. And I'm going to try to hold us to just a couple of minutes per community, just so that we can make it through all of these and start to learn a little bit more about the prototypes as well. And so if I give you a little signal in the screen or ping you in the chat, that means you've got about 30 seconds left. I'll try to give you about a 30-second warning when 2 minutes is up. Okay, so Berea, Independent, I believe, Paula, I know you're just being a trooper here, and thank you for being present and sharing, and I really appreciate it.
I hope everybody can hear me. I also have my community co-lead on with me today, Jenny Hobson. So I've just been diagnosed with COVID, folks. So I'm going to power through this. Our slide. So we were very pleased with our application process. Of course, we did receive applications from several folks that are tried and true, always volunteers. But we were very, very impressed with the number of the diversity within our coalition. So one of the things we wanted to lift up is that we did have some representation from our LGBTQ community, which we felt was very powerful. In addition, one of our most areas of need are students with disabilities. And so having those folks at the table outside of our traditional ARC or IEP meetings was also very powerful. We didn't, at the time that I completed this slide, we did not have any business representation. However, since we made some connections over the weekend, and we have had someone that is serving in the political sector as well as a local business person jump on board with us as well. One of the member stories that I wanted to share that I put from our application really lifts up that they felt as if identifying with the United We Learn campaign was really a positive, and that there were several reasons that this really resonated with them. The whole child approach, and then being a family with kindergartners, which we thought was also very powerful. One of the things, just the last bullet here, we really feel like in order to meet truly the diverse needs of our students, that we must create that place where students can be their authentic selves, where we value and honor that learning. We create systems that enrich the whole child and rise voices that have been silent. So that's sort of what we are all about at Berea. Jenny, would you like to add anything else?
Just that I think that we have a great coalition coming together of folks that we maybe don't see at our committee meetings as often. And it's just super exciting to be doing this work in a P12 setting where we have people that want to take on this kind of work for the next, 13 years, like this one kindergarten parent.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, both of you, for so thoughtfully reaching out to your community and filling in gaps as you have noticed them. That's a huge part of creating an inclusive coalition. So I'll just remind folks to just jot notes to yourself or put them in the chat, things that you're hearing about inclusion that are resonant to you. All right, and next slide, Boone County.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jim Detweiler. I'm the Chief Academic Officer in Boone County Schools. We are really learning a lot about inclusion, and we're really taking to heart through this initiative. I think it runs parallel with some of the things we're doing in the district with our strategic planning right now, and also establishing our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging task force. So this is a timely conversation for us. So our coalition, we did put out an open application process. We had 56 applicants and a lot of diversity in that application process. We ended up with 36 members. I think, you can see there, 7 district leaders, 1 board member, 7 community agency leaders, 8 parents, 2 students, 9 teachers, and 2 principals. Our co-lead is Teresa Cruz. She is not here this evening, but she is the Hispanic family coordinator from Learning Grove. So she's going to be really, really helpful as we try to be more inclusive with this work. And you can see the demographic makeup there as well. We also have 2 non-English speaking members, which is a challenge for us. We have not done a good job, especially in some of the district work. I think our schools do a much better job than we do at the district level in having tools available to families to access materials, et cetera. Super pleased to see that the United We Learn was translated into Spanish. And now we need to work to make sure the slides that we're using in our meetings are also Spanish for those 2 members, which we can do. Also have 2 of our members who identify as LGBTQ. So like my BREA colleagues, I really am happy to see that as well. Our member's story comes from a 5th grade teacher in the district who is just frustrated with the way that we've been approaching assessments, not only locally, but statewide and federally. You can see in there talking about, are we really preparing our students for the real world with these assessments, or are we just assessing them to death? So that's a theme that keeps coming up. What we're learning about inclusion, basically is that true inclusion is a deliberate choice. It's a choice that we make. We have to make sure that we're providing those mirrors and those windows all the time so that we're learning about each other and we're providing those opportunities. So moving forward, really happy to be part of this process, really proud that the state is really taking this on and looking forward to keep moving forward.
That's great. Perfectly timed, Jim. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the commitment to really being inclusive to different languages. It's amazing. Thank you. All right, next slide. Bullitt County.
Hi, my name is Rachel Bramlett-Schomburg, and I'm the Director of Secondary Ed for Bullitt County. With me, I have Mike Edmundit. He is our community contributor, and he's going to talk about our coalition group that we've come together with.
So Bullitt County is not worldwide known for its diversity in any regard. So we felt very fortunate that we had almost 100 respondents to our survey for joining the committee. I think part of the credit for that went to the warm language that was used and the approachable language and the approachable format that was used to reach out. So we were looking for diversity in all the different forms that we could. And so we landed on, I won't read you the numbers here, but we found gaps, right? When we were looking for different groups of folks, we clearly need to recruit a little bit more for diversity of students, a few more business owners and community members, and some recent alums. One of the groups we wanted to have was people who had just very recently graduated, have their input also. So we have a reasonably good distribution here considering. But we think there's more. So we're going to go get it before finalizing our committee.
Okay, and then the other piece that we put up there is that you can see on the slide deck, this is one of our EL teachers. We are lucky to have, we've grown to 2, even though we probably need a lot more support than that support our entire district, but also want to put supports in place for them to be able to reach out and for those families to feel comfortable as part of our community. One of the things that we've learned that's been come up quite a bit is inclusion takes time, it takes strategies, it takes intentionality, and it also takes the hard conversations to address the unknown, not to make anybody feel intentionally uncomfortable, but address the things that maybe have been put to the side for so long.
Wow, that's a powerful quote. I just put that in the chat. I want to hold that for us, that it takes time, strategies, and intentionality, willingness to address discomfort. It's really a powerful reflection. Thank you, Rochelle. Next slide. Okay, Corbyn Independent.
Yes, my name is Mark Daniels. I'm Director of Support Services in the Corbyn Independent School District. And I've been a member of different types of coalitions and very happy to be part of this. And especially being in a small community, we tend to gather the usual suspects because we know that they're willing to serve, or I know them well enough that I can really try to pull them over to what we need. And so I'm very excited. We have 18 members at this point in time, and we are still adding. So, but this is a core group. They are fairly diverse for our, what I would say, neck of the woods. We try to include as many community organizations as possible because that all feeds out and they know people and very excited about what they can bring to the table. One of our members is the mayor, and she is very, very involved in the betterment of everything. And she's very enthusiastic, and I love having her on board. I know that she is very limited in relation to what she, because she's pulled in a million different directions, but we do have her, and that's a great thing. We don't have as many school district personnel at this point in time, and that may be kind of a good thing, bringing other voices out, because when you have kind of a school-based thing, they tend to dominate sometimes, and we want to hear more voices. We have 4 student voices in our community and 2 representing parent organizations. So I'm just excited about that. As far as a one member story, Carrie Calico, she's one of our representatives, and she brings a wealth of information to and experience to everything. She helped introduce SEL into our school district years ago before we knew what SEL was. So, but she's a trainer in Green Dot, mental health first aid, trauma-informed care. She just brings all of these elements, and she knows all of these agencies and can reach out to bring in more people. So that's, as far as what we're learning about inclusion, we're trying to bring as many varied voices and experiences to the table. And I'm excited that we are probably going to have an actual meeting, with people and not seeing everybody in a box. Nothing wrong with that, but anyway, I'm excited about having that. We are going to feed everyone, so that's a good thing. But also to be able to expand those educational opportunities and bring some recommendations, especially I think one of the other school districts, as far as talking about assessment. What is authentic assessment? How can we better serve our students so that they can show us what they know? Because we know that they know a lot, and it's not just a paper, pencil, or computer boxy test thing, that whatever we're doing this year. So
thank you. I appreciate that so much, Mike, and appreciate that you're involving such a prominent local leader who can see schools as a part of a full community initiative. So thank you for sharing a little bit about your coalition. Next slide, Green Up.
Hi, I'm Tracy Moracy, and I'm the superintendent in Greenup County, and we're very honored to be a part of this. We started our journey being a part of the KCAE this summer, and so we kind of had a little bit of a mindset that we really wanted to be a part of an L3 contribution. So we did our open enrollment via social media with just a Google form and left it open to anyone who wanted to join. And then we also followed up at different school events that maybe where that you may have grandparents or people who are not as technology savvy would be able to fill out a Google form, because we do have a real issue with lack of internet in our county. We have a large size county. We ended up with 50 people, and 3 more have contacted me over the weekend. And we had our first meeting, which was last week. They've heard such good things, they want to come. So to me, that's very powerful that people are now asking to be a part of it just because they're engaged. And that's something we've needed in our county for a very long time. So if nothing comes out of any of this, just the fact that we engaged our community in a positive way is very, to me, it's progress. In 2010, our county was actually considered PLA status. So people are very bitter about the concept of state testing. So when we talked about, being able to move this and change some things and have a voice, they were super excited about that. And we were very focused on getting a variety and not getting the same people that we always have show up for our calendar committees or PTA and all of those types of things. So what we discovered is we were kind of preaching to the crowd a little bit because we did have such a diverse community. We looked at the KY stats and shared how much money you can make as far as having an associate's, a bachelor's, or an apprenticeship trade, and found in our area with lack of industry that people were just as well off. There was $1,000 difference between whether or not you had a degree or if you had a 2-year degree. So that was very interesting to our people. So we've highlighted one of our entrepreneurs, and he owns his own body shop. And his statement was, I'm excited about moving away from a traditional testing and moving towards a career experience. So, he said that on-the-job training with his father was the best experience, and he does quite well for himself now. And it has nothing to do with taking an ACT or an SAT or a CTBS or a K-Prep or any of those things we've done in the past 20 years. So historically, a lot of our people, when it comes to inclusion, have been underrepresented when it comes to the decision-making for our students. So our goal is to bring everyone to the table and bring that positive mindset that we are listening, we are hearing you. And even if we cannot count it as our assessment for the state, we value your input and we're going to create something that shows we honor what you think. So it was a very powerful night, and it's very refreshing to get more people calling and asking us, hey, how do I join this? We even had people come to our board meeting, which has not happened. And I was last night was our board meeting, and I saw an audience, and I thought, they're here to complain about prom. But they weren't. They were actually here because they heard we were doing great things, and they just wanted to listen to what we were doing. So it's been a positive experience for us so far.
So great. Thank you so much. And Tracy, it's so amazing to hear about the momentum that can build around this sort of thing. Once word gets out, you can see people getting more and more excited. So thanks for sharing that story. All right, Lawrence County. Nick.
Good evening. I'm Katie Webb. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for Lawrence County Schools. Just some basic information about our coalition. We currently have 31 members. You can see there on the left-hand side of the slide, they come from a variety of backgrounds and serve multiple roles in our community. We have several what we call first-timers on our L3 coalition. They've not served on committees for us before, and we were intentional about going out and asking people who had not worked with us on a site-based council or a school improvement committee to be on this work with us, because we do want a variety of viewpoints. One thing that was interesting as we started to form the coalition was we started with the open application process first. And we put that out on our websites, on social media. And to be honest, I was a little disheartened because we had no applicants through the open application process. At the same time, we were asking people in the district and people in the community to give us ideas of people that would be good to serve on this work. And out of the 32 people we reached out to, 31 of them agreed. So it was that idea of intentional invitation. That was really a big thing that I learned through this process. If you look at the side there on the member story, we highlighted a man named David McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie is the CEO of the J.J. Jordan Center here in Louisa. That is our local nursing home. He's also a graduate of our school system. He and I had a long conversation. He was absolutely thrilled just to be asked to give his opinion and to be in on the work. And I think a lot of times we take for granted if people don't approach us or apply for things, they don't want to have a voice. They don't want to be part of the work. We need to be intentional about reaching out to people in our community. And going back to Mr. McKenzie, he wants our students to learn the academic or the career skills they need to succeed. But it's like you said, it's more than a test. It's more than an assessment. It's the skills they need to be successful in life. We are still working on our open application. We still have that available. I loved Greenup County's idea of going out to the community events and the school events. Looking back, I wish we had done that as well.
Wow.
Thank you, Donnie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katie. And thank you, first of all, for living into our community agreement of putting learning over performing. I really appreciated that you shared the challenge that you ran into with the open application and how you responded and really got an amazing reaction from your community. And so thank you for that. I also love how I can see in the chat and in the comments that people are making how everyone in cohort 2 is already learning from one another. Hearing about strategies, it's not too late to continue to add folks to your coalitions. So things that you've heard here tonight, that ideas that might have sparked, we invite you to bring that back and continue to utilize new approaches for creating inclusive coalitions. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. In the chat, there's already been a bunch of interesting learning and reflections about inclusion, but we would invite every member present here to just jot down one response to what you heard and what you're learning about inclusion in these local coalitions. And if you happen to have something in mind, like how is it different than inclusion here in the KCAE, which is at the statewide level? So I'll give you a second to reflect on that. Awesome. Well, other reflections may come to people. As people noted, inclusion is not something you can necessarily fully achieve or arrive to. It's an ongoing process that we engage in with intentionality. And so it's really great to have a space like this where we can push each other and learn from each other about that. There's been so much in the chat, so many loving and supportive comments, urging and offering up ideas for how to be more inclusive to all of us and to our communities and to all the L3 communities. So it's really great to see. So thank you for all of that. So thank you, cohort 2, for really offering up your experience so that we can all learn. And now we're bringing in and inviting cohort 1 to do the same with their prototypes. So we are going to break into small groups by cohort 1 community. So you have renamed yourselves with the first part of your name as the county that you are going to go and learn from. And when we go into breakout groups, the lead will share their prototype and what they have learned from their testing. And as a group, you're going to have a discussion about these 3 questions. First, what feedback has been most important in the development of your prototype? Second, as communities are creating new experiences, how might we hold ourselves accountable to providing this experience with quality for all users? What data, you as a KCAE member, what data would you want to hear in order to check on quality and equitable access? And third, what are we learning about assessment and accountability more broadly? And so we're going to engage in these questions, but we're going to do so in a special place. So we have been iterating and learning about how best to support our L3 communities. And one innovation that we have come up with for this next phase of our work is the website. Gretchen, can you share the website?
Sorry, I'm getting it up as fast as I can here. Stop share, reshare, etc. Here we go.
Okay. So we are going to put this in the chat, and there's going to be one person in each group who's going to be designated as a note taker. And the slides that demonstrate or that describe the prototype are all here in this one web page. And there's a note taker that is unique to each county. So this is Allen County's slide, but if you can pull up Allen County's note taker, that'd be great. You got to go over to the right. There's a little box in the right-hand corner. There you go.
I already have it up, so it's being weird.
Yep. And there's places and questions that we've been thinking a lot about with regards to each habit and inclusion, empathy, co-creation, and reciprocity. Because they're in the testing phase, cohort 1 is really living into the reciprocity question. How can we be responsive to the needs of our schools and communities? How can we be responsive to their expectations? So if you scroll down, the questions that are in the chat there's a little note catcher for them right there. And so these are the reflection questions for cohort 1. And so we're going to invite you to take your notes from the conversation directly into this document. And that'll allow us to see across all of the cohort 1 communities and learn what everybody's learning about reciprocity. And so please use that as your note catcher for tonight and when you're answering these 3 questions. Okay. And this is going to be a 20-minute breakout. We're going to come back at 5 o'clock on the nose Eastern time. And I know, and so Lauren, are we good to go?
Yes, and I have seen some folks have renamed themselves at the last minute, in the last couple of minutes. So if you find yourself in a room that you didn't want to be in, I'm going to check the box where you can choose your room as you wish when you click on breakout on the Zoom toolbar. So feel free to move yourself to the correct room if you have been placed in a different one. I'm going to pause the recording right now and open the rooms for 20 minutes.
The recording has stopped.
Oops. Oh, Teresa, that was really like the best. Now I know that's what oops is. I learned something today. That's great. Thank you, Teresa. All right. Well, I'm sorry to have pulled this back in while I know that the cohort 1 leaders were getting so much from, I'm sure, the thinking and the feedback in the room. We were just getting into a conversation about what data would be important to fueling this work at a level of high quality and with equitable access. So these are critical questions. I would invite folks who were in those rooms to email or contact anybody in the team here, myself, or any of the leads who were presenting to share your thinking if you didn't get a chance to share it, because I know that they would really benefit from it. This is a powerful group, KCAE, that is really has a lot of insights that can really fuel and support their process. So Gretchen, if we could share the slides. And if you have things you want to put in the chat, just general considerations for this work, love to hear it. Actually, I have a few minutes to just, if you have thoughts around what we're learning about assessment and accountability broadly, we'd love to hear it if anybody wants to share. Okay. All right, we'll jump forward. So a couple of weeks ago, the state of Kentucky decided that they would apply for the competitive grant for state assessment, which is a federal grant that will award a number of grants in the amount of somewhere between $2 and $3 million over a period of years, sort of 3 to 4 years. The grants are to fund work that will go 3 to 4 years. I reached out to everybody and asked if a group of folks would be interested in informing and helping co-create the application for the state, for the Commonwealth. And a bunch of people raised their hands, as I wasn't surprised at all. It was a really wonderful mix of people. It included family members, it included students, included administrators, district leaders, and community advocates as well. And so what we're about to present is what resulted from a couple of rounds of iteration based on the input from many, many people. And so I want to give a little bit of context. As I mentioned, the award is about $2 to $3 million. And there are two absolute priority areas, essentially areas of emphasis that have been identified in this particular grant cycle. The first one is multiple measures of sort of student performance. And the second is around competency-based education, or CBE. And for a number of reasons, and we shared some of this with the grant team that met from KCAE, the state has decided that competency-based education is the right area of focus, both because it aligns to work that's already underway in the Commonwealth, and also because we think that this might be a place where Kentucky might be particularly competitive and might have fewer other applicants in this area. So everything that comes next is going to be through that frame of competency-based education and the federal emphasis on that. Next slide, please. So we are building on this work together. So on the work that we have done together. So in the work that we started last year, we identified this current state theme, this area of concern, this deep concern that all of you seem to note, that there's a hunger for local accountability and assessment systems that portray a more complete picture of each student and value the investment that teachers, school leaders, and local school boards make in providing relevant, personal, and joyful learning opportunities to each person in their community. The reason why we're highlighting this theme is because every single one of the cohort 1 teams identified this as an area of emphasis. They identified other things too, but the one thing they had in common was that they wanted local accountability assessment systems that portrayed a more complete picture of every student. And so this was a really powerful call to action for those of us who have been working on this grant, because we're really working from what you said was important to you. And so we want to share this problem statement next. And then what I'm actually going to ask, and I'm going to remind everybody of how this works, but we're actually going to do a fist of 5 to make sure that we feel a common sense of commitment to both that theme and this problem statement. So we went through a process where we identified an issue that we were going to solve. Essentially, we said that there have been processes where we've listened to people across the state, and that local people are concerned about this lack of coherence and connection between local and state expectations of schools and districts. So there are competency-based projects and initiatives underway that address the whole child locally. But then we have state and federal expectations that focus on academic status and growth using these large-scale curriculum agnostic assessments that don't seem to honor or value what local communities are saying they care about. And so there's this disconnect between the state and the local, between the student-centered competency-based curriculum and these assessment systems that seem to be not measuring all of those things. And so this is our big question. How might these various elements at multiple levels be brought into a coherent, balanced, competency-based system of accountability and assessment? So what I'd love is for either you to come off of or turn your video on or into the chat, give a fist of 5, like 5 meaning, yes, I'm totally all in on this theme and this problem statement, or fist, which means I want to block and I don't want this to move forward. And anything in between. A 1 means it still goes through. And a 5 means, yes, I'm committed and feel like this is the most important thing. Your commitment to this matters, because we are going to note this as we continue to move forward with this work. A 10 times 2 multiplier. So I do want to note that that could be a fist. And a fist would mean that we're not good with this and we don't want it to go forward in this current form. And so I just want to verify that that's the case.
I think you had already put a 5 in earlier, Bonnie.
Okay, great.
That is a fist pump, I think.
Yes, all right. Down with that. Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate that. Great.
Also interpret it as a punch in your face, Donnie. Like, already, let's move on. Yeah.
Yes. Affirmation, punch in the face. 5, ready to roll. All right. We're going forth with your affirmation of this is the problem statement. How do we reconcile the state and the local in something that feels balanced and coherent? All right. Feeling good. Okay. Now we just got to write this thing. Well, let me share a little bit about where this is landing now, and then offer up any additional or offer up a space for any additional reflections on this. So next slide, please. So the other way. There we go. All right. So the context based on that problem statement and based on that question, how might we reconcile the local and the state? We wanted to just make sure that everybody was feeling really grounded in Kentucky's rich history of improvement, the competency-based education work that's already underway, and the inclusive design work of this group, KCAE, and the L3 communities. But the issue is that we don't actually have a consistent and sustainable space for organizing efforts in support of the United We Learn report, which this group wrote together, and competency-based education. We don't have, it's not really built in a way that's reliable. We know when it's going to occur. It's consistent. We know how it's going to influence various decisions. And so we have this group, which shows how the work could be done, but this group is not yet baked into a state system of decision-making and policy-making. So the solution is extending this. We create an inclusive council that's modeled after the KCAE that will shape innovation, resource development, and policy formation that's related to assessment and accountability and CBE, competency-based education. There is going to be subcommittees that provide technical support to local communities. So all the prototypes you just heard, in order to help support them in that development, we would provide technical support to that work through this mechanism, and generate processes for addressing this disconnect between the local and the state, and to generate new policy approaches from hearing and listening to that work. And this council that we're proposing would direct the co-creation of the tools and resources necessary to support competency-based education. So if there are things that need to be built that would be of use to local communities, this council that we're proposing would invite the kind of inclusive coalitions like we have here to create those tools and resources. Because what we've heard is that when it's all created somewhere else and by somebody who's not in our community, then we tend not to accept it in quite the same way. And so we want to build these things with communities, with students, with families, and with local communities. So let me pause here. Would love to, in the chat or coming off of mute, to just hear your reactions to this, anything that you feel like we're missing, any notes of like particular excitement about anything that we're proposing. This is the time, because the grant is we're cranking away at it. So yeah, this is the moment to introduce your perspective. You can just signal excitement too, just general excitement. Or not. If there's something that doesn't feel like it doesn't stick, that's okay too.
I was just going to say, I like the idea, and again, I'm sure this will get fleshed out more and we'll understand a little bit more, but technical support, because I think many of us kind of have an idea of what we want to do and what should be done, but it's the how to do it that is I think the difficult part. And when you have folks that are already very, very busy in our school districts doing great work, this is just an added thing to kind of bring on, although it's critically important. And so having a technical support arm to help move that work forward, I love that.
Thank you, Marlon. I really, that helps, because we need to know that these are things you really want, right? As opposed to things we think you might be helpful. So the fact that that kind of granular technical assistance would help is really, that's a good signal to us. And Judah, thank you for your question. The council itself is part of the product. It's a different way of making decisions about assessment and accountability policy. It's a different way of creating the resources, and it's a different way of providing additional support to local communities, so that it as a mechanism is part of the solution.
So thank you for that clarification, Donnie. One follow-up to that is, and I may have just missed this, I apologize, how will the council itself be constructed? So this is a state level council, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And sort of in a similar way that we were composed, with the same eye towards diversity of roles, geography, demographics.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cindy, thank you for your question around the SCAC. That is we're figuring out how this part of the work of this grant will be figuring out how does this connect to those types of existing organizations. What is the dotted line? What is the flow of information and insights that moves from one to the next? So yeah, thank you for flagging that for us too. Well, you all have my email, and we are continuing to work on this and develop this. We really invite you to lean in and give us your insights and your perspectives on how this could be best in service of your communities. So with that, though, I'm going to turn it over to, or I want to just say my appreciations for your engagement in this work. And here's the timeline. Here's where we're going from here. So the rough draft is going to be finalized this Friday. Just catching my breath a little bit right there, just reading that out loud, saying that in a real space that's recorded and live streamed to the whole of the Commonwealth. That's cool. Okay. And we will be then sharing that with the grant team that has been assembled next Tuesday. And then from the latter half of the week, we'll be preparing the document for public comment. And then it will be available for everyone to just lean into. I just want to note that we're going to be emailing everybody here and telling you to go on and publicly comment on things that resonate with you. So thank you for engaging here and giving you a sneak preview of that. We'll be then finally just preparing that for its submission, which will occur on April 15th. So click go on my taxes and click go on the grant. All right. With that, I'm going to hand it over to, I believe, Melody and Karen to talk a little bit about a different and inclusive approach to strategic planning.
Thank you, Donnie. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Dodd, the Chief Performance Officer at KCAE, and I have Melody Cooper with me this evening. She's our Strategic Plan Program Manager. It's really important to us that in the spirit of co-creation, that we get some input from all of you on our strategic plan. This is something that we have been working on since the summit, which was a culmination of all of the listening that we had done over the year. So our output and continuation of that work is our strategic plan. So we really do want to get some feedback from you, particularly around the kinds of measures that we're going to be using. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Melody. She's going to share with you our vision, mission, values, and strategic priorities, and then I'll jump into the objectives real quick. So Melody, are you on?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So I am going to try to go through these parts quickly. I believe this group has actually seen some of this part before. So again, we used feedback that we've received. So our vision stayed the same there. In the mission, we went ahead and made sure that we included language about creating broad partnerships to provide leadership so that we could reach our vision in a way that involves some co-creation and getting that valuable feedback from groups like this and beyond. Next slide. And so our values also, I believe you've seen, but you will see some changes that we made in our values based on input from this KCAE as well. We changed to say student success instead of, I believe it used to be achievement was one of our values. And we wanted to move away from that test score sounding language. And so we've changed that to student success. And we've added innovation in there as well to reflect the values of this group and the state. All right, next. And so the priorities, the 3 priorities we've identified are ways that we put all of that into action. So how do we see us focusing our efforts and our resources to achieve the vision through our actions with the mission and through our values? And so, again, we've got access and opportunity. There was some change reflected there to move away from that traditional sounding test score stuff. And we also included some language about educators there as well, so that students have the equitable access that they need so that they can achieve success post-secondary or career readiness, but also for the educators to have the resources that they need to provide those opportunities. And then we looked at authentic engagement and partnership. So again, involving those key stakeholders and really engaging with diverse perspectives. And then operational excellence is one that we've kept in the agency for a few years now, because we believe that when we continuously improve, then our services and our work, all the other stuff improves with it when we're looking to get the best results for ourselves. Okay, next slide.
Thanks, Melody. Then getting into our strategic objectives, what I want to point out is that we are taking a balanced scorecard approach to this strategic plan. And what that means is that we're looking at our work from various perspectives. So on this slide, you'll see at the bottom, we have agency capacity. That really entails making sure that we have the right people and that those people are doing the right things and they have the tools that they need in order to do their jobs. So that's something that KDE is working on. We're always wanting to ensure, because that is really the foundation of what we do. The people in any organization are the foundation of what we do. So what do they need? How do we get them there? Building on top of that, once we have the right people and they have the tools and the knowledge that they need, then it's all about optimizing our work. And that's where the perspective of internal processes comes into play. So if we have the people, they have what they need, how do we then make sure that the work that we do is truly effective and optimized? So we're looking at several different, and I'm going quick here, I'm not calling out every single one of the objectives, which is on the right-hand side. I know it says perspective in both of those columns. The right-hand column should say objectives. Those are going to be really set by KDE, which is why I'm not calling those out right now. But the top two perspectives are where we really do want input from all of you. So when we think about financial stewardship, the two objectives that we've set there are to advocate equitable funding and then strategic spending determinations. So this is both internal and external. Are we ensuring that the money that we spend at the state level is truly on the right priorities? And again, that all flows from what you just heard Melody talk about. If these are truly our priorities, is that where the money is going? And then the advocating for equitable funding. This goes all the way to legislators, so up the chain and down into districts, as everybody in the organization, in education, spending money in an equitable way. And this is an area where we really need your help to think about how will we measure that. Okay, so that's one ask from you. And then the other perspective that we're looking at, of course, is customer and stakeholders. And we put this at the top. This is the most important. So we want to improve educator access to high quality resources. That's one of the things that KDE is 100% responsible for, making sure that teachers and administrators have what they need to do their job. So just like we put our employees as the foundation, we also need to make sure that the rest of the system has what they need, and it's our job to remove any barriers. So how are we doing that? How well are we doing that, and how will we measure that? Improve student opportunities. We set this as a priority. How will we know if we are truly improving those opportunities for students? And then finally, support district and school innovation. Again, another one of our key values, our core values, but also here an objective. So how will we know if we are truly promoting and supporting that kind of innovation? We've talked a lot at the State Department about some of the initiatives that we're doing that support this. And this L3 work fits right in there in that innovation objective. So we really see everything that you all are doing as part of this. How should we measure that though? So just as you're struggling with how you're going to hold students accountable and hold your schools accountable, we're doing the same thing at the state level. And so we truly are open. We don't want to just put proficiency and closing the achievement gap in here as the measures. That's been the historical way to measure things, but we truly do want to know what you all think about how else we can measure this. So for the sake of time, I know we've only got a few minutes left, but if you have any thoughts on any of these, and again, we're looking at those top two perspectives from you. So any of those objectives for customer, stakeholder, or for financial stewardship, if you have thoughts, go ahead and put it in the chat. The last slide has my information and Melody's if you want to contact us directly. And we may also put together just a Google Doc and send it out to you just so that we have one place to collect all of that. So we can talk about, Melody and I will talk about that when we get off of here, and maybe Donnie can send that out to everybody. But if you have any thoughts in the last couple of minutes, please do share with us or put something in the chat. We'd be happy to hear your input. Back to you, Donnie. You're on mute, Donnie.
You would think, right? That
gotta happen at least once.
Yeah, at least once. Well, I was just typing, Karen, this idea of innovation and who gets to drive innovation. One thread around inclusion here has been, do we have families that represent students who are learning English? Do we have families and teachers who need or require special education services? Are they involved in the innovation process? That could be for an example of a metric that kind of bubbles up across some of this, that builds on some of the work that we're talking about tonight.
Thank you, Judith. I see transparency in there.
Transparency, yes. Yeah, that might be something to consider adding to the values, certainly for sure around financial stewardship. But I also want to suggest maybe broadening not only educator access, but educator training, not just to high quality resources, but what I like to call just in time training on specific topics. And I see again my world of disability where, and I believe it can be applied across the board, where the PDs and the feedback from educators, and now I'm talking nationally, has been that it doesn't necessarily come exactly when it's needed. Sometimes it's situational. So just kind of thinking through that. And again, I just want to say, I can't help myself. I'm not going to apologize. That the improving student opportunities, in my mind, must begin with helping those students to define for themselves what success means and what an opportunity is. So that once we get away from the traditional assessments, which I think is fantastic, I think we have to go back and empower the students, and even young students can do this, can begin to be at the center. Yes, student agency, somebody just said. I love again, I think there's a lot of tools in the disability world that could be applied. And one of them is student person-centered planning, so that every student is engaged in developing that plan. So this is probably too micro for this conversation, but just wanted to get those thoughts in. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
One of our community agreements is starting and ending on time. It is 5:30 Eastern, and I'm really grateful for all of the input this group has already given to both cohort 1 and their thinking about their prototypes, and cohort 2 and their composition of their local coalitions, and how much this group has probably inspired, I hope, has inspired cohort 3 members who are here today, who are just starting their journey. But know that we all walk this journey together. That's the beauty of the KCAE. And that's why this work features so prominently in the way that we're thinking about the grant and building capacity to do this kind of co-creative work moving forward in the future. So wonderful time seeing all of you tonight. Have a great evening, and we will see you soon.